Tim McClone, your $20 million broker. I called it Foreclosure 2.0. I did a video back in January about foreclosures. National news is talking about it now. Foreclosure 2.0. Let's see what's going on.
Flying on a jet plane, sipping on some champagne, yeah. Plan on making memories, cruising in a Bentley, yeah.
3 points. Moratoriums prohibited new foreclosures from starting for nearly 2 years, creating artificially low foreclosure rates. Number 2, now that these protections have expired, foreclosure numbers are seeing triple-digit growth. And number 3, Americans' expenses are going through the roof. There are strong warning signs, and foreclosures are up over 700%. You know, the U.S. economy shrank last quarter for the first time since the pandemic. Recession struck 2 years ago, contracting at roughly 1.4% annual rate. But consumers and businesses kept spending in somewhat of a sign of underlying resilience. Don't hold your breath. The steady spending suggests that the economy could keep expanding this year, even though the Federal Reserve plans to raise rates aggressively to fight the inflation surge. So before we get into the housing, let me update you on stagflation. I did a talk on this a while back, and it's here, ladies and gentlemen. Stagflation is back. You know, I called it in another video. Other people have been talking about it, but the definition of stagflation is growth below its long-term trend and inflation above trend. So we got one negative quarter right now of growth for 2022. A recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. So the economy did not just grow slowly. It contracted on an annualized basis, which is not good. Imports, which are subtractions from GDP, expanded massively, and exports fell. You know, consumer spending was weaker than expected, suggesting that households balked at the high prices. Inventories fell, subtracting from the GDP. So U.S. trade policy has left our economy extremely vulnerable to trade imbalances, because our leaders refuse to erect adequate trade safety valves. And anytime the U.S. economy recovers faster than the economies of the rest of the world, the U.S. income leaks out to foreign manufacturers. That means Americans earn less and produced less overall. So in March and February, the trade in goods deficit rose to record highs. The trade deficit wound up subtracting 3.2 percentage points from the first quarter GDP. Inventories were weak after a massive buildup at the end of next year. Meanwhile, inflation, as we all know, is running wild. The price index for gross domestic purchases increased 7.8% in the first quarter, compared with increase of 7% in the fourth quarter. So, the PCE price index, a measure of consumer inflation that the Federal Reserve uses in its projections and targets, increased 7%, compared with an increase of 6.4%. So even if you exclude food and energy prices, the necessities that President Biden wants you to think of as suffering from the Putin price hikes, the PCE price index jumped 2.2%, compared with an increase of 5% last quarter. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's not looking pretty. We're in double digits inflation if you look at the data in the micro, and I went through this in another video and looked at all the websites. And with inflation soaring, bond yields climbing, and the Federal Reserve poised to make large interest rate increases, many economists and investors are worried about the possibility of a recession. Fannie Mae changed their predictions. They just changed them. Everything was good a couple weeks ago. They believe enough has now changed over the past couple of months to expect the eventual downturn by the end of 2023 is their projection. Some are sooner. They were very, very bullish. Now Fannie Mae economists are among them, predicting a modest recession in the latter half of 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a recession right now a little bit. So home sales now expected to decline by 7.4% this year and 9.7% in 2023, a dramatic adjustment from March when Fannie Mae forecasted a 4.1% decrease in home sales this year and a 2.7% decrease in 2023. So, after the moratorium expiration, foreclosures jumped 7x. Is this the first sign that the housing market is in trouble? January 2022 saw a massive jump in number of foreclosure starts, with ATTOM Data Solutions reporting 23,204 foreclosure filings, a 700% year-over-year increase, according to Black Knight. I love Black Knight. Raising foreclosure rates aren't great news for the housing market because they could be an indicator of distress in the market. As foreclosures steadily rise, could this be the first red flag for the housing market correction, folks? So you need to dig in the numbers before you panic. A 7x, roughly 7x jump sounds massive, but even a small uptick in foreclosures would have been a noticeable increase when compared to recent levels. Moratorium projections that prohibited lenders from initiating foreclosures during the pandemic in 2020 and 21, all that help we got, resulted in the lowest numbers of foreclosure filings since the data has been tracked on a national level. So why do you think that is? So, today's foreclosure starts, while much higher than recent past, are still, but they're upticking big time. They're a little below pre-pandemic levels, but in 2021, there were a total of 151,153 foreclosure filings for the entire year, which was 69% less than pre-pandemic levels in 2019. And for the month of January, there were 56,251 foreclosures filed in 2019, 58% more than the numbers filed in January of 2022. So foreclosure filings are continuing to rise month over month, folks, with February 2022 seeing 25,833 new foreclosures. It's an 11% increase from January 2022, which, it's welcome news for distressed real estate investors. It's some welcome news for me, but the numbers aren't necessarily a red flag for the housing market at this point. Something that you really want to look at is mortgage delinquencies are the most telling sign for the rise or fall of future foreclosure filings. Right now, there is no reason to believe foreclosure starts will jump dramatically. Some people are saying that. Given the national delinquency rate is sitting at a low right now, 3.3% as of January 2022. Employment remains somewhat strong and the housing market is on fire still, putting home equity levels at an all-time high compared to 2008. This means that roughly 2 million delinquent households today have solid alternatives to avoid foreclosures. People have a few more options now. But just because today's numbers remain low doesn't mean things can't change very quickly. And the 800-pound white whale, inflation, is a growing concern for Americans. Stagflation, as the cost of basic necessities like food, groceries, electricity, property taxes quickly becomes more expensive and you can't pay your mortgage. So budgets surely will tighten as a result, and it's very possible we could see delinquencies increase dramatically in the coming year, 2022 into 2023. There is also noticeable backlog of loans that were previously in forbearance that haven't been addressed. They're sitting on the back burner and they're not being counted. These are loans that are in some type of active loss mitigation or completed loss mitigation efforts, but still remain past due. They're past due, and the ultimate outcome of these loans, either foreclosure, repayment of that debt, or a long-term loss mitigation solution like a modification, which remember 2008, how they screwed people over. It's not known at this point yet. So signs of distresses are definitely there right now, folks, but they're nowhere near alarming levels at the time. At this time certainly aren't a red flag overall for a correction. The real estate market is still seeing fierce competition and high demand thanks to housing shortage right now and low interest rates overall. So, the Federal Reserve, has stated that it will be raising rates to combat inflation, which could, curtail the rapid growth the market is seeing. But for now, all signs point to the housing market staying red hot. Properties in foreclosures. I'm always looking at this stuff. They can be found on the MLS, multiple listing service, among other spots. They're also listed in newspapers, folks, bank officers, websites. For buyers considering foreclosed property, auctions are another venue to find available houses in today's time right now. So in today's market, where a shortage of homes for sale keeps prices elevated, buyers may not necessarily find a steal when looking at foreclosed properties. Banks who own REO homes have an incentive to sell them quickly, but they are aware of market prices and also invested in recouping the value from the home. So for buyers right now considering a foreclosed property, it's important to get through that inspection to determine the physical condition of the home, obtain an estimate for the cost of repairs, which should also determine the offer price you may want to make. So looking at the data from the chief economist at National Association of Realtors, many real estate investors are looking for deep foreclosure bargains, but it's still a seller's market right now. And I track these all over the nation. So I like to end the presentation with this quote: "With oil, we can control countries. With food, we can control people." Who said that? This guy, Harry Kissinger's. What do you deduce from that, people? Think about it. Have a great day.